I'm sure all of you have questions as well, and we've got some of our guests here this evening who've actually given their names requesting that they be allowed to ask certain questions. And I'm going to kick off the question and answer session by asking Mr. Sai Subramaniam to ask his question. I think he's got a question on the issue of outstation checks.
My question is, online banking is playing a major role. Even though clearing of outstation checks is taking more time, what the RBI just taking the action to reduce the time of collection of outstation checks?
Right. I think the question is more to the banks. So who can I ask? I'll ask State Bank of India to start.
Earlier we used to have clearing of checks only for the local checks drawn locally. But now Reserve Bank of India has introduced express clearing system, whereby there is no need for sending an outstation check to that particular center to get it cleared. If a check is drawn on Hyderabad and is presented at a branch in Visakhapatnam, that can be presented in the clearing in Visakhapatnam itself and it can be cleared. The express clearing provides that the check can be cleared at the local clearing center itself. RRBs, local urban cooperative banks, state level cooperative banks which do not have across the country presence at all the centers, these issues still continue and those are being addressed through other means. And check truncation, once that is introduced, that will help us to even do it faster.
Thank you, sir.
Apart from that, sure. RBI has also introduced one National Electronic Fund Transfer Service. The intended beneficiary can be transferred the funds in his account from your branch through an electronic mode. So that is faster, that is paperless, and the transfer of funds can take place the same day.
All right, our next question is from Surya Kiran.
Recently, my brother-in-law has applied home loan, but they are saying his name is reflecting in CIBIL, which he has used before 2-3 years back, credit card. But recently, now he is maintaining very good track. But any possibility to remove his name from CIBIL?
He's been maintaining a good payment record, but he's applied for a home loan now on which he's facing a problem because of a past CIBIL history.
Yeah.
Okay. Anita, with you?
Sure. CIBIL is a place where all banks update their current status of, where customers have paid their loans or not paid. It's an automatic update that goes. So that's one. Second is that you mentioned that the case was settled earlier, so I'm assuming that there was a certain amount of money was not paid and the case was then settled. So that's one part of it. The second, which you talked about, is that subsequently he has been having a loan again or a credit card on which there's a very good track record. Now what happens is when you take a CIBIL report for the home loan that he is now applying, if someone has a settlement in their prior period, there will be a certain amount of negative score on that. So the score will be slightly lower. And then it will depend on different banks. Some banks may decide that yes, it was much in the past, and in the last few years he's been maintaining a good track record, so the loan will be worth giving. And some banks may not want to do it. So I think it's a different risk appetite for different banks. So that's the way I would look at it. So.
Sure. But Mr. Raja, don't you believe that this is somewhere that maybe the BCSBI ought to come in? Because if a customer, assuming he's faced a genuine problem, he's approached the bank and said that, look, I'm not in a position to pay, I'm willing to do a settlement. He's settled, he's squared off, the bank has taken a hit, but that account is closed. Why should that customer be held to ransom maybe 3 years later? Shouldn't that be forgotten, and why don't things move ahead? Can't we move in that direction?
This CIBIL report essentially is it's a credit history of the customer for the loans that you have taken from the bank. Now we have some provisions already in the code. One of that is that the customer is entitled for a copy of the credit information report from his banker. The other provision in the code requires the bank to educate the customers about the implications of this CIBIL credit reference agencies. So if a settlement is going to happen, the bank is required to educate the customers about the implications of that settlement, where he actually seeks and gets a waiver of a portion of the outstanding dues. Now we have not looked at having any provision whereby despite the customer actually having a not 100% good track record or credit history, he should still be given a high credit. So I think that probably would not reflect the correct credit history of the customer.
Questions, Mr. A.K. Banerjee has a question.
I have a question on what Reserve Bank is doing in terms of putting a cap on the number of credit card an individual is holding.
All right, so I don't think that's more an RBI question. I think that's a question that each of us needs to ask ourselves. How many credit cards we ought to hold, whether we should hold 1 or 10. But I'm going to actually ask the bankers to respond to this, and I'm going to actually ask Anita, assuming you do have customers who actually, like the idea of holding 7 to 8 credit cards, how do you react to such customers?
Sometimes, I've seen that a person may have quite a few credit cards, but if there is a credit card that's giving you a unique benefit, it could be a tie-up with maybe an airline, and you very frequently fly that airline, so you get certain discounts, etc. So maybe they need that particular card for a particular part of their purchases. So really, it is, like you very correctly said, Judge, it is not for me as a bank to judge. I'm really looking at a couple of things. One, do you have the credit history to be able to service one more credit card? We would like to ensure that the customer is able to pay the fee, which is either a joining fee or a renewal fee, and that all payments are made on time. So I think really from the bank side, we would avoid giving customers too many credit cards, because it's a first thing to tell us that does this person really need. Of course, when we look at the customer segment, we look at his income, and if his income warrants and he can service another card, we wouldn't actually at that point in time say no to a customer. We believe that most of our customers are very rational, and most Indians are very, very clear about how much they own, and they do not like to have liabilities on them. And then we of course have credit counseling centers, etc., which do help customers, and a lot of education is there with customers about how much you should borrow and how much debt you should carry with you and what you should do at different stages in your life. So I think all of that we try and educate our customers and hope that our customers do the right thing for themselves.
7 to 8 years ago, there was this aggressive rush by many banks across the country into the retail space. The aggression with which many of these banks grew came with its own set of problems.
Very quickly, I think the whole banking system came together. So for example, from the BCA-SBI, we got model codes which said that when you're selling itself, you should be able to tell customers what is it that they're buying, what would be the terms and conditions of the product.
The banks have now come a long way in terms of treatment of customers, because they're all committed to the codes, which means that they're all committed towards ethical banking practices.
Banks have definitely been responding to the various policy initiatives of the Reserve Bank and putting in place systems and processes. Customer expectations have also undergone a sea change.
I won't say that the level of service in the banks have gone down. The banks have responded to all the measures which have been suggested by the bank, and on their own they have tried to improve the customer service.
The customers are all not the same. We have the young generation who appreciate the nuances of these products, and lakhs of customers, old generation customers as well as traditional customers who are not used to these kind of complex products which are being offered by banks on various new platforms which they are having.
Across the banking industry, we find that the number of complaints with regard to the ATM is a major issue which are coming in a big way, and this is being redressed in a faster mode.